Huri huri দিও আগলি বাগরি দিও লাহরি গগন দিও লাহরি গগন দিও গগন ওই কি রে গগন ওই কি
এগ্ৰিকালচাৰ ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিৰ পৰা স্কলাৰসকল আহিছে সকলোকে আমি স্বাগতম জনাইছোঁ আৰু আমি ইণ্টাৰেক্টিভ ছেশ্যন আৰম্ভ কৰিবলৈ গৈ আছোঁ সকলোৰে উপস্থিতি আৰু সহযোগিতা কামনা কৰিছোঁ ব্যক্তিজনে সদায় এনেকুৱা কামত উদ্যোগ লৈ ভাল পায় গতিকে তেখেতৰ বিশেষ সহযোগত আৰু বিশেষ উদ্যোগত আজি অনুষ্ঠানটো অনুষ্ঠিত হৈছে গতিকে তেখেতক আমি সন্মুখত দেখা পাইছোঁ তেখেতক আমি ধন্যবাদ জনাইছোঁ আমাৰ সন্মুখত আছে নন্দনাথ শইকীয়া মহাবিদ্যালয়ৰ সন্মানীয় অধ্যক্ষ উবাংশু দত্ত ছাৰ প্ৰাগজ্যোতিকাৰ সন্মানীয় সঞ্চালক ঐশ্বদীপ শইকীয়া ছাৰ অশুভ চন্দ্ৰ ডেকা ছাৰ আৰু বিভিন্নজন আহিছে আমাৰ শিক্ষকসকল আছে আৰু লগতে সাংবাদিক বন্ধুসকল আৰু বিভিন্ন ক্ষেত্ৰৰ বিশেষজ্ঞসকল আহিছে সকলোকে আমি স্বাগতম জনাইছোঁ কেওটা শিক্ষানুষ্ঠান যিসকল আহিছে সকলোকে আমি স্বাগতম জনাইছোঁ এতিয়া আমি পোনে পোনে ইণ্টাৰেক্টিভ ছেশ্যনৰ কাৰণে আগবাঢ়িছোঁ So at first I would like to request Prakrit Borua sir, Prakrit Borua sir, please take seat here. And at the same time I would like to request Mazmina Goswami and Garima Soikia from Pragya Academy to welcome Prakrit Borua sir. Prakrit Borua is a second year MBA and MA student at Harvard University. Previously, he worked in New York and London as a machine learning scientist at Veteran Health 2020 to 2024, building models to evaluate the safety and effectiveness of cancer drugs. He holds a BSc in Computer Science from Brown University in 2020. Another great scholar, Nirvik Borwasa, is here. May I request Nirvik Borwasa to take chair here. Antariksha Hazarika and Namrata Priyadarshini Haikia from Pragjyotika Senior Secondary School. Antariksha Hazarika and Namrata Priyadarshini Haikia from Pragjyotika Senior Secondary School. Welcome, Nirvik Borwasa. Nirvik Borwasa is a software engineer at Zen Street, New York, a Stanford University alumni. He completed his bachelor's and master's in computer science, contributed to cutting-edge research and helped teach several Stanford CS courses. At last, another scholar is here, and she is Emilia O'Halloran. I don't know my pronunciation is perfect or not. Emilia O'Halloran. Taniha Bordoloi from Agricultural University will welcome Emilia O'Halloran. Emilia O'Halloran is a researcher at Harvard University studying neighborhood trust, crime and violence. She is a former management consultant and McKinsey and Company and holds a master's in philosophy from Cambridge University and a BSc in computer science from Brown University. For coming to us. Now, really it's a great opportunity to listen and learn from the three research scholars, Prakrit Borua sir, Nirvik Borua, and Emilia O'Halloran. If everybody will permit me, then we'll start the interactive session. I'm going to go for a second. Was it? Rajiv Borua sir and Roma Borua ma'am. So please come forward. It has Rajiv Borua sir and Roma Borua ma'am. The lucky children. We request them to take chair here. Hope Prakrit Borua sir will start it. So please, sir.
Hello, thank you very much for having us. We're non-Prakrit. I'm Titabar Laura, so it's really nice to be here. Really appreciate having all of you here, and what a lovely performance. So I'll introduce myself very quickly. My name is Prakrit. I grew up in Mumbai and Singapore, but I was born in Calcutta. But we kept coming back here to Titabar almost every year, so I have many fond memories of being in Titabar. And I really think of myself as being part of this community as well. So thank you for having us. I'll tell you a bit about my educational background and some of my work background as well. So I studied a lot of my life in Singapore and spent some time in Mumbai as well in primary school. And I came to the US when I was 18 to study computer science at Brown. And there I became really passionate about understanding how we can use computer science to understand public health and improving health outcomes for people. So fell into the space of machine learning for oncology, for cancer, and researched that for a couple of years and really tried to understand how we can build more effective cancer medications and drugs. And from there I realized that there was a big gap in my knowledge and I wanted to understand how business worked properly. And so enrolled at Harvard Business School, and I've been there for the last year and a half, understanding how not only can we build technologies to improve health outcomes, but how can we build sustainable businesses to make sure that those health outcomes really reach individuals. So that's a bit about me, and would love to answer any and all questions that people might have. If you have any questions about our educational backgrounds, anything that we studied, or anything about how we reach universities, please let us know. Happy to talk about anything.
কোনোবাই কিবা যদি সোধে either in English or in Assamese, because he can speak and listen and learn.
Any question?
So, Mr. Prakrit, when you are testing a drug for its effectiveness and safety, what exactly do you look for it? Firstly, the drug must be a bit economically viable as well. So, what exactly do you look for when it comes to effectiveness of a drug? Do you look for its basically effectiveness on a large group of people, or effectiveness against, for example, let's say it's more effective on a stage 1 cancer than a stage 2 cancer or something like that. So, how exactly do you test the effectiveness of a cancer drug using machine learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are many different stages at which we test whether a cancer drug is safe or not. So you understand the safety before it's been released to the general public, and that's when you're testing on animals and humans and trying to see how they're responding to the treatment. But what I really focused on was the effectiveness after a drug has been released into the public and you see people are actually on the drug. And what we actually do is we have a lot of data from people who take a drug and doctors measure whether they're responding to the treatment, whether their tumor is decreasing over time, what other kinds of illnesses they get. And the problem is all of this data is spread around the US and around the world. So it's very difficult to understand if a doctor's office has data on a patient, how can we actually centralize that information and understand the effectiveness? So what I was really focused on was centralizing all of that information into one large data set. And we had the largest data set in the US of cancer patients, around 3 million patients in one data set. And then we used machine learning to really understand what are the kinds of common illnesses that these people have over time, and how does that compare across different groups of patients. So in that way, we tried to see, does this drug have less comorbidities, we call it, or adverse events compared to other drugs?
Thanks.
I wanted to ask that, what was the first step did you take in order to get into Harvard?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll notice that I did my graduate studies. I'm doing my graduate studies at Harvard. I haven't done my undergrad there. I think the journey to get to Harvard was a pretty long one for me, where I did my secondary schooling in Singapore internationally, and I was always interested in studying computer science and the sciences, and I pursued that in my undergrad as well. So I made sure that I was researching things outside of my degree, and I was doing some extracurriculars outside of my degree. And when I had the opportunity to apply after I had graduated from my undergrad and I'd worked for a couple of years, I'd already had a couple of years where I'd pursued my interests outside of school. Of course, I'd also done the necessary logistics work of doing the exams necessary to apply. But really, I think the path is you do the logistical work, which is do the necessary exams. There's only one exam that you need to take. But then the most important part is pursuing your own independent interests outside of school. So for me, it was doing research in the cancer and machine learning space, and doing that for a couple of years, doing work as you expect, and then applying for graduate school.
Thank you.
As you have said that you are working on and researching drugs and their effect on cancer patients, and you are also from US and you are studying business. So I would like to ask you that I have heard several stories of US drug being extremely expensive. Could you please explain why that is the case, and that even though the drug research is very highly active in US and the Western regions, why is it so unaffordable there?
Yeah, it's very, very confusing why some of the drugs that are developed in this country, in the US, can be so expensive. Essentially, the problem comes down to one key point, and it's that it takes a lot of money to develop cancer drugs, or any drugs really. So these pharmaceutical companies spend a lot of money developing these drugs, and in order to make sure that they can recoup or pay back the cost of developing these drugs, they price them extremely highly. The reason that they're able to get away with pricing drugs so highly is because in the US there's a middleman, and that's insurance companies. So there are, unlike in other countries like the UK, there aren't public insurers that pay for people's drugs. There are private insurers that a lot of people go through, and these insurance companies will pay very high costs for drugs, and because there's a separation from an individual who pays for drugs versus the insurance company, they're able to charge much higher amounts, and it's a very complicated process, but the reason that they charge very high prices in the first place is because of these research costs that they have, and because there's separation between the individuals taking the drugs and the people paying for them.
Thank you, sir.
My question to you is, in your journey, you must have faced a lot of challenges, and how did you face them, and like how do you overcome them and become this successful? Can you tell us this?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to have the support of my great parents over here, and of course my brother and girlfriend there as well. And I think that it was really just taking things one step at a time. I had multiple times where I applied for graduate school. I didn't get into Harvard the first time that I applied, and reapplying after a couple of years and really trying to improve some of my skills and some of the things that I worked on. I was able to eventually get admission. I think that it was any time that I have actually experienced a challenge, it was just trying to be persistent and working through the things that I have. Fortunately, honestly, I haven't experienced too many very, very difficult outcomes, but I think that's just the support of my parents and family that helped me through that.
So it was basically consistency.
I think so.
Thank you.
Like us here about Harvard, we expect extreme geniuses and stuff like that. What exactly is campus life like on there? You've got peers who are among the best in the world in their respective fields, professors who are world-renowned. So what exactly is it like to live on the Harvard campus?
I've been, and it feels very similar to being here. I think, honestly, talent is pretty evenly distributed around the world, and the sort of talent that you get here is very similar to the sort of talent that you get there. I think mostly it's a question in the difference of resources. So, I mean, they've had many years that they've been investing in the university, so of course they have many resources at their disposal, but I honestly don't think that people are entirely different at all. If anything, there's sort of, because of the resources, more opportunities and more time to be able to invest in the things that people are interested in, whether that's reading more about specific things or working in different industries or focusing on their particular research questions. I think the talent is the same, perhaps the resources are slightly different.
Good afternoon, because I honestly have not fixated my dream, and many of my classmates and friends, they know what to do. And I have a love for science and the technological part of it, but I am not aware of the courses or all of the possibilities that is available in the world. And so I would want you to elaborate a little bit on that so that it helps me decide what I want to do in the further.
Do not think that I've always known what I want to do, and I have not always had a very clear picture of what my dream was. I think this is something that people find out over time, and I'm still absolutely finding this out myself. So I don't want to give the impression that I have everything figured out and that I had a clear path that I've always been following. I think what's helped me in the past is trying out different jobs, trying out different internships, trying out different classes, and seeing what really makes me feel excited. If I read a specific book, do I get excited about what I'm reading or do I not? And I've eliminated a bunch of stuff that I didn't find exciting. I remember reading some biology books and seeing pictures of doctors and what they're dealing with and thinking, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen, and I don't want to do that. But for many of you studying medicine or hoping to study medicine, I'm sure you find it exhilarating and really interesting to see that sort of stuff. So I'd say read widely, read diversely, and see what piques your interest, and when you see something like that, follow it a bit more, but don't have the preconception that things follow a linear path and are very straightforward. It's going to change over time, and it keeps changing for me as well.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bachelor in Computer Science and a second year English student at Harvard University. So my question is, after 12 examination, bachelor's in data science engineering and then doing MBA, will it be a better combination, and how will it affect us in our future? Sir, after 12 examination, doing bachelor's in data science engineering and then doing MBA, will it be a better combination?
I don't think better. I think that it was a different path that I wanted to go on. So I'll let my brother speak to the pure computer science path, but he's obviously doing very well in that space, and he focused on the technical work. I think I realized that I was interested in slightly different things and wanted to focus more on the business side, so I ended up doing an MBA. I don't think one's better than the other.
So are there any scholarships to get into universities? Plus, is it expensive there?
Yeah, it's a great question. Truthfully, it is definitely expensive to be in a US university, but there are a lot of scholarships that people take advantage of. My class at Harvard, around 45% of people are from outside of the US and are internationals. and a lot of people end up going onto scholarships or taking specific student loans that they feel comfortable taking because they know that they're going to get a job afterwards where they can sort of pay down these loans. If I were in your positions, I would definitely have a look at the schools that say they're need blind. So if you're looking for US universities, there are a lot of schools that do not take into account your financial position when you're applying. You are going to be admitted based on your merit, based on your interest in what you've done, and financing is a separate question. And there are actually a lot of resources if you are able to have a look in terms of both scholarships that are posted on college websites. For each individual college, you'll find out information about the scholarships they offer, as well as if you want to take financial aid options. So colleges will pay for some people to attend, or taking the student loans method, which is what a lot of people do for their graduate studies, which is what I'm doing.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I wanted to...
Good afternoon, sir. As you stated before that you didn't get into Harvard in the first try, I wanted to ask, like, in which field did you try to improve yourself over the years to get in again?
Yeah. At that time, I don't think I'd done enough work on some of my own interests, whether that was in reading things I was interested about or doing my own personal projects in computer science and in the cancer space. So I think my application was pretty weak at that time. And after I graduated, I made sure that I was working in the field that I was really interested in. I made sure that I was doing pretty well at my job, and I spent some time outside of my work also trying to pursue things that I found interesting, whether that was research on my own time, different areas that I thought was interesting, or volunteering work that I did outside of my work as well. So I think just spending time figuring out what I was really interested in, and then when I did figure out what I was interested in, spending a lot more time intentionally focused on that space made it a lot easier for people to understand what I really wanted to do, both at Harvard and afterwards. And I think that really helped my application afterwards.
All right, thank you, sir.
I thank Prakrit Purva for giving us this opportunity to listen and learn from him. And now Navik Boracha is here to speak and listen from you.
Hi everyone, it's an honor to be here speaking to you all. As mentioned, my name is Nirvik. I did a bachelor's degree in computer science from Stanford University and also a master's degree in computer science from Stanford, and now I'm working in New York as a software engineer. To give you a bit about my background, computer science is something I've always been interested in. I think I started programming from a young age. I really took advantage of the internet when I was younger, and I took a lot of open source materials and courses online from different universities in programming. And that really informed my interest in the field. So I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be a software engineer. While I was at Stanford studying software engineering, I really enjoyed teaching people about a number of different areas of computer science. So I taught a couple of courses in operating systems. I helped teach a course in intro to computer science. And finally, during my master's degree, I also engaged in a lot of research in computer science. So I specifically focused on machine learning and operating systems and how we can combine the two to make machine learning as efficient as possible. Right now, I'm working in New York as a software engineer. We specifically create machine learning models to trade stocks. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about studying software engineering in the US, what life is like working as a software engineer in the US, or anything along those lines.
Good afternoon, sir. I have a single query regarding Indian students going to US for study purposes. As all of us know that Donald Trump is currently the president of USA, and there have been various complications and newses of Indian students not having a great time these days going to USA for studying. Do you think there will be similar implications and problems when we are of the age in which we are going to USA at that time?
It's definitely very complicated, and I know it's a tough time for a lot of international students, especially students from India. My thoughts on this are that, yes, things are a bit more difficult now they have been before. And there's a lot of uncertainty in the visa situation, for example, for working in the US. But the current administration isn't going to be around forever. In the next 3 years, I have a feeling that things will revert back to how they are before. Also, a lot of the technology industry in the US relies on Indians from every single level. I think a lot of people realize that in the US, and that's why there's been a lot of pushback against canceling the H-1B program, for example, which is the main visa program by which Indians from India are able to work in the US. So while the situation is tougher now than it has been before for working in the US, I still think by and large a lot of Indians will have the opportunity to work in the US if they're interested.
Thank you, sir.
I hope you don't mind asking this, but did you guys personally or any of your friends face racism while studying there or working there, and how did you deal with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was very fortunate in that I don't think I recall experienced any instance of racism while at university or as a software engineer working in New York. Silicon Valley, for example, has a huge number of Indian immigrants that are all very supportive, and there's a very large Indian community there. So I've always felt very good support while in Stanford as an Indian student there. Additionally, software engineering, as I mentioned before, Indians work there at every single level, from the entry-level software engineers all the way to the CEOs of companies like Google and so forth. So I've always felt a very large Indian community wherever I've been to, fortunately, and I've not had to experience any racism like that. I think the US is also just a very welcoming place to immigrants in general. The US is built on immigrants, and people recognize that the US identity is in large part formed by immigrants. So while there are certainly problems of racism in some parts of the US, particularly in parts of the South, I think all the places I've been to, fortunately, I've not had to experience that.
Thank you so much.
Like the outside world, you have seen it. What is the best piece of advice you'd like to give us? Because we are very new to this. So, yeah. And you are very passionate about computer science. And for me, I think that I'm really clueless about my dream and all that. I'm really interested in science field, but yeah, I'm very clueless.
Sure. So the first thing I want to emphasize is my brother Prabhat mentioned how talent is distributed roughly equally around the world, and the main thing is access to opportunities. And I very much agree with that. I think a lot of the people and the talent I've seen in the US roughly matches with all the talent I've seen in India. And the main thing is just the resources people have and the opportunities they're exposed to. To combat that thing, I think the main thing I recommend is just saying yes to every opportunity that comes up and volunteering yourself for things even if you don't feel fully qualified to do them. I think some of the best things I've done, for example, engaging in a lot of computer science research at college, came about just because I volunteered myself or asked a professor to join the research project even though I wasn't fully qualified for it. And that helped me gain experience in a number of different fields that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to before, and also let me understand what I truly enjoyed. There have been a lot of failures along this process. So for example, when I was in high school, I worked as a researcher at a biomedical research lab, and I realized that I really did not enjoy biology or biomedical research. But it was a nice way to understand truly what I want to do in the future, and this would not have happened if I hadn't just volunteered myself or emailed a professor asking for some research. So yeah, I think the main thing I'd recommend is just diving headfirst into opportunities even if you don't feel entirely comfortable doing them. I think that's the best way to gain exposure to new things.
Thank you, sir.
The world looks like with the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, will it bring so much development that we reach the futuristic version that we visualize of the earth, or will it completely nullify the importance of human employment?
That's a great question. It's a big question. I'm not sure I'm entirely qualified to answer it, but I'll give you my interpretation about what I think is going to happen. I'm personally quite excited by AI. I think a lot of interesting things will happen, but I think we'll also run into some big physical limitations with how the world is set up. For example, I think the primary limitation in AI adoption in the future will be power systems and power grids. AI is extremely power hungry, and we've seen in the US, for example, people and new companies can't really build out new AI data centers because the power grid is at capacity. So I think our limiting factor as a society will not be our actual models or what we would build, but in fact our physical limitations and how our infrastructure in the US and in other countries perhaps hasn't kept up with the rate at which progress is happening. Beyond that, I'm not entirely sure I'm qualified to answer it, but I think for now I'm pretty excited by AI. I'm excited by all the changes happening in the software engineering industry.
Last one, sir. I'd like to ask something. What is an aspect of computer science that is generally overlooked by the general public? For example, a layman like me, for example, that some of us might not know, but you are someone who is in the know about the field of computer science. Some developments that you'd like to shed the light on?
Sure, yeah. So I think with the rise of AI, one common perspective people have is that AI will replace all of software engineering forever, and that software engineering is a dying career. I personally don't subscribe to this vision. I think that while a lot of entry-level jobs will be taken over by AI, for the most part, all the same problems that people are working on in software engineering will still persist. A lot of the things that software engineers work on is, how do I build a system that can handle 1 billion requests in a single day? How do I build systems that can recover easily from a whole data center collapsing, or something along those lines? Those are pretty hard questions to answer, and they require a lot of training, and I don't think AI is at the stage yet where it can fully replace how to answer these hard questions. So yeah, I think one of the main things about software engineering is, how do you build systems that handle things that only happen in the 0.1% of cases, and how do you handle things that only happen in certain edge cases. So having to think like that is, I think, still a very important skill for the future.
Thank you, sir.
As an Indian, how did you prepare yourself to study in an auspicious university like Stanford? As I've heard a lot that it's actually pretty hard to get in Stanford.
Yes, so as I mentioned, I really went deep into my area of study, which was computer science. One of the great things about the internet is the fact that there are so many educational materials available online. So what I specifically took advantage of was MIT. They publish all their lectures online for free. They publish all their homework assignments online for free. So I used to spend my free time going through those lectures, learning about computer science, and creating side projects based on the material I had learned. I found that to be very useful. Also, another thing I did to prepare for life in the US was preparing for some of the exams that are required. So one of them is called SAT. A lot of universities don't require that anymore, but it's still nice to have in some cases. I took an online course for preparing for the SAT, and I took that at 11th grade.
Is coding actually required
To be a software engineer, or for the SAT, or in what sense?
in any of these sectors?
Yeah, so as a computer science student, coding is very much required. It's probably the core part of the degree, but I would say most other degrees don't require coding. If you want to study pure math, for example, there is no expectation for you to take a computer science course. If you want to study medicine, a lot of people do take coding courses, but it's not an expectation by any sense. So.
Thank you.
That what's really important for prestigious universities? Is it grades or projects or?
So I think the nice thing about the US is that it weighs academics and extracurriculars roughly in equal amount. So you do have to have good grades in order to qualify for a lot of universities, but beyond that, they really care that you care about your subject. So they want to see that you engage with the community and engage with your subject in any way as possible. So this might take the form of side projects, this might take the form of reading books about your subject. One thing I did when I was in high school was I started a club to help younger students with their computer science homework. So just ways to support your community and show that you actually care about your subject in a way that goes further than academics is something that US universities really care for.
Thank you, sir.
I want to know what inspired you most during this whole journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I'm someone that's always very motivated by hard problems and just seeing how far computer science can go and how much technology can apply to. I think what really motivated me was seeing all the various different examples of computer science around the world, in industry and in academia, and seeing how it could actually help people and solve really hard problems in an effective way. So for example, the work that we're doing in Flatiron Health, I find really inspiring. I think it's really cool to see how machine learning and things you learn in university lectures can actually be used to improve people's healthcare outcomes and so forth. And I think that's why I really wanted to go deep into computer science. I really enjoyed how all the software engineering skills you learn can be applied to real life in a variety of different ways that can help support people.
ask you, who helped you most in your success?
Yeah, so I think I benefited from having a number of people around me that really supported me at every step of the journey. First of all, having my parents and my brother around me was really useful for me in terms of having resiliency. There were definitely setbacks that occurred at a number of steps throughout the process, but being able to have a support system like that definitely helped keep my spirits up and keep me going. The other thing I really enjoyed was I had several teachers, both in my high school and in college, that I really looked up to, and they were really strong mentors for me. They helped show me the direction of where I wanted to go, and also showed me just all the different avenues by which a career in software engineering could take me. So I think both the combination of family and mentors in schools and university were the primary people. So that said, I think I'll hand over to Amelia now, and she can talk about life in Cambridge and Harvard, and any questions you might have about that.
Mornam Amelia. I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's really, really an honor to get to talk to you all today. So first, a little bit about my background. I was born and raised in the US, in Chicago, and I studied computer science in my undergraduate degree. And then I worked in business consulting for a couple of years before doing a master's program at the University of Cambridge. And now I work as a researcher at Harvard, where I focus on research related to crime, violence, and arrests in the US. So if anyone has any questions on the US school system, the UK graduate school system, or doing research, I'd be happy to take those. But first, I actually wanted to quickly address two questions that were already asked to Prokrit and Nervik and give a couple of my thoughts on those. So one question that was asked was around how to figure out what your interests are. And I think that's a really great question for me. When I was trying to figure out what I was interested in, I realized that I was very interested in computer science, but my school didn't offer computer science until 11th or 12th grade. So the way that I realized that wasn't through school courses. It was through when I was a kid or when I was younger. I used to constantly go on khanacademy.com and just search for a random subject and do one course in a random subject and see whether it was interesting or exciting to me. And that was how I found computer science. So, just try out a bunch of different things online. As they kept saying, the online resources are amazing and free and so helpful. So that was, just wanted to address that first. And then the other question that I wanted to address was around, you asked about the financial aid and the process of paying for college. It's a great question, especially in the US. It can be very expensive. But I just wanted to say that there are so many different paths to paying for university. When I was going to university, my family would not have been able to afford to pay for my tuition. And so I followed a multiple step process of first applying for scholarships and financial aid. And as Nervik mentioned, a lot of schools in the US actually provide financial aid and scholarships to international students as well. I know Stanford is one of them. And so financial aid and scholarships were able to cover the vast majority of my tuition, for example. And then after that, you can work in college. So I was working at least 2 jobs the whole time I was in college, and that really helped pay for things as well. And then finally, everything that was left over was through student loans. So that is a little bit more intimidating because it might take some time to pay off. But those are the 3 kind of main paths that I took to pay for university. And a lot of them are, like I said, open to international students as well. So there's definitely a path there to being able to afford it and go through those different processes. But now I'll open it up to any questions. Yes, so that's a really good question. In Chicago, for example, I don't focus specifically on climate or climate change in my research, but some of the people that I work with in my department have focused more on that and have shown, for example, in Chicago that the hottest days of the year are always the days with the most crime in Chicago. So as the temperature rises, people can get more and more maybe hot-tempered too. So there's definitely a correlation there between temperature and crime. So I would say yes, it's not my area of research, but a lot of people do research that in the US, and I think it's a really interesting topic.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Amrish. Today I'd like to ask you a question. So, as a child, I have always been fascinated by the world of crime and violence. And even I do a lot of study or research about various genocides that took place in the course of history, like the Holocaust, and various massacres that took place in our country as well. But ma'am, I have seen one trend. In India, the violence or the crimes are mainly done, or they are mainly due to the conflicts of religion, caste, and gender. But ma'am, in the US, I have seen that there is no such specific reason of why the crime has been done. For example, like teenagers, children of age 16 and 18, they often go for killing spree in schools, and due to some weird fascinations and all. And US has also been a home to various notorious serial killers like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and all. Ma'am, I just want to know the reason, like, why such kind of tendency persists in the minds of young US people, and also how we Indians can save from their racism. Like there have been various crimes against Indians in US. So how we Indians can ensure our survival in the US?
Basically, why and how violence exists in the U.S. And in what context it really comes about. And it's interesting. I think the research shows that in the U.S., while the cases that often make the news are these very premeditated, either mass shootings or school shootings or things along those lines, the vast majority of crime, especially homicide in the U.S., is not premeditated, but is more spur of the moment, in the moment altercations or fights that arise. And it's really hard to do research on why that's the case, because or how those situations come about, because, like I said, they aren't premeditated. They aren't really planned out beforehand. And so, a lot of interventions that are currently being done in the U.S., in Chicago, for example, are more around how to get people to think more slowly and to pause in their thoughts while they're in a fight, instead of trying to, I think the issue right now is that a lot of people in the U.S. have these altercations, and a lot of people in the U.S. Carry guns, so that can cause more harm. But I would say that the issues that you were talking about the pre-planned shootings, aren't as scary. Just to try to quell anyone's fears if they're thinking about going to the U.S. They're not as common as you would expect. I grew up in Chicago, like I said, and I always felt completely safe in Chicago, and I lived in New York, and I always felt completely safe in New York. So I hope you guys aren't too worried about that if you go to the U.S.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
As you said, you research on crime and stuff. So I wanted to ask what kind of crimes that are hidden from the public, but you think it's a major issue to be looked or discovered into?
That's a good question. I think for me, my one of my main areas of focus is in domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So those are more invisible and less reported. For example, homicides in the U.S. are incredibly accurately reported. So almost any homicide in the U.S. is recorded, is in the data, in the files, whereas most intimate partner violence and domestic violence is not reported unless it leads to a homicide. So I'm really interested in trying to dig into how we can get more accurate data on that, because I'm a computer science. I study computer science, and I love digging into actual data of things. I'm a quantitative researcher, so it's really essential that, like you said, we have more visibility into those types of data sets. That's a good question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. So I have two questions. Both of these are non-technical questions. And the first question is that you have studied both in Harvard and in Cambridge, two of the best institutions in the world. So what kind of differences did you see between the education systems of US and the UK? And the second question is, what led you to pursue this multidisciplinary path? Because it's not so common in India. For example, if a student studies computer science in undergraduate, he will most likely pursue the same subject as a postgraduate subject.
Yeah, that's a great question. So to start with your first question about the differences between the US and the UK, I would say if anyone is interested in applying for schools in the US and schools in the UK, what they look for in their application process is a bit different. And so you would probably want to, tailor your application differently to the different schools. So for example, in the UK, I think the application committees really look for a specific academic focus. And so when you're writing your essays and your statements of purpose for UK institutions, you really want to focus on, I've read these books, I've looked into this research, and this is my academic area of interest. Versus in the US, I think they're much more interested in knowing about you as a person, and your extracurriculars are much more important. So there I would focus more on, I did this volunteering, I shadowed this person at this hospital, and this is what I learned from that. So it's more sort of narrative oriented. The schools themselves, I think, are quite similar, honestly. It's different examination processes and things like that, but the actual courses are quite similar. And then as to your second question about multidisciplinary, it's a great question. I was just thinking as they were speaking that it's interesting, all three of us studied computer science in our undergraduate degrees, and all three of us are doing something very different now. I work in research, Nerd's a software engineer, and Procrit is in business school. So that is the nice thing about the opportunity to potentially go to the US for graduate school, even if you don't go to the US for undergraduate university, is that, I think the US does really, the US job market does really value having some interdisciplinary knowledge and background. Especially if you want to go into something like, I used to work in business consulting, and in that they definitely were looking for people who studied computer science, who studied political science, who studied even, English, anything. So they're looking to make teams of people who have very different backgrounds. So there are a lot of jobs that do focus on hiring multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary people. And that's where I would say, again, even if you don't want to go to the US for undergraduate university, still keep in mind that you might want to go to the US or the UK for graduate school, and that's a whole, a separate opportunity and a really exciting path too.
One last question, ma'am.
Yeah.
If there is a student who is trying or thinking about pursuing the multidisciplinary path like you, what kind of advice would you like to give him, or what kind of biases should he avoid, and what kind of mindset should he have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the number one piece of advice is just to read as much as you can in as many different subjects as you can, because I felt like when I was studying computer science, I was really interested in crime and violence, but I wasn't sure how to combine it with computer science, and it took me a few years of working another job and doing a master's and kind of trying to combine it. But my interest in that really just came from going to my school's library and looking through the rows and picking out any book that was of any interest to me. So the main thing is just read, be curious, read as many books as possible. That's my advice.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, what do you prioritize more, the academic knowledge or the skill set?
What do you mean by skill set?
Like, you do coding, so...
Okay. Yeah, good question. That's a good question. I think for me, the skill set kind of comes in tandem with the academic courses. because I studied computer science, and even now I don't work in computer science, but I use coding in my job, so I have to keep up with new, data science practices, coding practices. So they kind of work in tandem, especially if you're studying something that you're interested in. But yeah, it's a good question about how to prioritize. I think if it's a field that you are passionate about and that you want to read about, then it'll kind of come together quite nicely, hopefully. That's my hope for you.
I know and have a lot of people under the poverty line. I know a lot of people and they have worked at my house too. So I have heard stories of domestic violence, and it's even normal in the society if like a child randomly dies of a bike accident or a daughter runs away from their homes. It's not even reported. They don't know that it's abnormal. They don't know it's a crime or thing to be concerned about. So, like, how do we do something to make them aware of the fact that this is wrong, that this should be something of concern, and they should do something about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think a lot of it, like I said, I am a very data-oriented person. So for me, it's really important to first have a platform where you can report these things, and have a centralized place where you can look and see how often the incident occurs. I know, for example, in Chicago, in the U.S., there were different administrations of police where some were much more focused on reporting crime and being transparent to the city, and other administrations that weren't. And in the administrations where crime was a lot more transparent and arrests were more transparent, I think that that's a healthier city and a healthier way for people to know what's going on in their city and how to go about fixing it. Because there are a lot of interventions that you can do, such as, research has shown that the more you know your neighbors and the more you speak to your neighbors and spend time with them, those neighborhoods have lower rates of domestic violence, for example. So there are all these different interventions that can take place, but first you need to have some data to be able to research it. So I would say if that's something that is interesting to you, look into crime data portals in the US and in other countries. A lot of European countries have great data sets, and just dig into a little bit, see if anything is of interest to you, and then you can become a researcher.
Ma'am, what are your views on the crime that occurs at the bigger level?
Can you say the question one more time? Sorry.
What are your views on the crime that happened on the bigger level?
I'm not sure what you mean. But
how do I explain this? Okay.
Do you mean like mass shootings or?
No, the crimes. The crimes that happen on the bigger level. So, what do you think about them?
She's asking about the gravity of crimes which are happening.
Oh, are you asking like the fact that it's increasing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good question. Yeah. So, I would say, that's a good question. So, there's an interesting distinction, I think, between how crime actually moves and how it's perceived. So in the US, for example, if we focus on Chicago, just as one city, crime has gone down significantly in the past 40 years, but my research project recently asked a big group of Chicagoans whether they think crime has gone up or gone down in Chicago in the past 40 years, and almost everyone said that they thought that it had gone up, when in reality it had decreased a lot, actually. And so I think there's a bunch of reasons for that, like what is shown in the news and what kind of things people talk about and how, perceptions form and spread across society. But in reality, the positive news is that in most cities in the US, at least, crime is really going down. Now, I only have focused on the US. I'm starting a research project that focuses on comparing the US to Denmark, but that is still in its beginning stages. So I don't really have much knowledge about crime outside of the US, so I wish I could speak more to that because it's a great question. But I don't have that information right now, but good question.
To share our ideas with the ideas of you. Really, we must thank you. And on behalf of the organizing team, I would like to request Bhaskar Titabar sir to extend our vote of thanks to Prakrit Borwa, Nidhi Borwa, and Emilia O. Helloren.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Amelia, how are you? Nirvik, Prakrit, thanks for coming and encouraging our students, and especially I'm full of thanks and gratitude to my brother Rajiv and Rima. And they have raised the children so well. And today we are not only proud as a Titabarian, but we are very much proud they have in their conjugal life done a great job, bringing such beautiful children to us. আজি বিশেষকৈ মোৰ বন্ধুবৰ ঐশ্বদীপ শইকীয়া, অপু ডেকা, আমাৰ শুভাংশু ছাৰ, প্ৰিন্সিপাল নন্দনাথ শইকীয়া কলেজ, আমাৰ প্ৰজ্ঞাৰ শ্ৰীযুত গোস্বামী, তেখেতে ষ্টুডেণ্ট লৈ আহিছে সকলোকে। মই আশা কৰোঁ you are all happy, and it is a first-hand live experience with graduates of Stanford and Harvard. When we talk about Stanford and Harvard University or this kind of top grade universities, we are all very fortunate to have them one-to-one today. And I wish all of you my very best. If you can try, you can be there. You can be there when you come back. Remember us. Again, we will organize the same for you. Okay, so that the next generation gets encouraged. Thank you all. And I thank my team because today everything looks very smooth, But before you reached, every day we talked how we are going to do it, how we are making it, how will we make it as a grand success on this kind of thing. But it is almost over now. And there will be a 10 minutes folk dance again. And after that, we'll close it. And then we'll depart with light lunch, okay? Thank you all. Wish you all the best. Wish you.
So, sir, please come with a gift for at first to Prakrit Borwa. Please you sit down. সকলোৰ কাৰণে আমি কিবা পেকেট লাঞ্চৰ ব্যৱস্থা কৰিছোঁ অকণমান বহা আমি জাষ্ট তেখেতসকলক এটা গিফ্ট উপহাৰ দিলোঁ। At the same time, I would like to request Apurva Chandra Dekar sir, Meenmoy Goswami sir, Director of Pragya, and Shumanshu Dakar sir, to Nidhi Borwa sir. Prakrit Director Sir, Master Giti Sir, Executive Sir, Dr. Sir, and Minamai Gusami Sir. Thank you. Now welcome to Emilia O'Halloran, ma'am. come with a gift for at first to Prakrit Burwa. Please you sit down. সকলোৰ কাৰণে আমি কিবা পেকেট লাঞ্চৰ ব্যৱস্থা কৰিছোঁ অকণমান বহা আমি জাষ্ট তেখেতসকলক এটা গিফ্ট উপহাৰ দিলোঁ At the same time, I would like to request Apurva Chandra Dekar sir, Meenmoy Goswami sir, Director of Pragya, and Shumanakshi Doctor sir, of course, to Nidhi Burwa sir. Prakrit Burwa Director sir, Executive Director, Executive Director, Dekar sir, and Meenmoy Goswami sir, Pragya. Thank you. Now we'll come to Emilia O'Halloran, ma'am.
I